What a time to be alive, to love movies. I want to talk about the current state of film criticism of the movie industry in a sort of a laid back yap session. I want to try this style because I'm lazy and this would be easier. Are movies dead or are we so back? Depending on who you talk to, you're going to get one of those answers. It's either the best movie they've ever seen or the worst movie they've ever seen. There's not a lot of nuance nowadays, so I want to add a little nuance to the conversation. Is film criticism dead? Is the theatrical experience dead? What is this rash? And what should I do about it? These are the kind of questions we're going to address in this video. I want to break it all down, so sit tight and maybe we'll get some answers. Probably not. I've got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is that movies rock. They're making more movies than they ever have before, and everyone gets to have an opinion now. Gates are no longer kept. They're smashed. The bad news is that everyone gets an opinion now, and that's part of the problem. We'll put a flag there and we'll revisit that later. When people say there are no original movies being made anymore, it's all sequels, it's all IP. There is some truth to that. Those are the movies that people are going to the theaters to see. But there are more movies being made than ever before. There are so many good original scripts being written and indie movies being produced. People need to watch them more is the issue. And then people get really upset when I say that, like, hey, you're putting it all on us. I kind of am, because if you care enough about movies to make that statement, that you're upset that there's no original movies being made anymore, then you could do a little research. I mean, there's like 10 billion movie influencers posting videos about little movies every day, so it's not even that hard to find. But also the onus is a lot on the theaters themselves. The theatrical experience itself is waning, and so we need to make it cheaper for people to go to the movies, and we need the experience itself to be more pleasing for people that are there to watch the movies, have less patience for the disruptors, the phone users, and all kinds of wild shit that goes down in movie theaters. Make them cleaner. Cleaner would be nice. But I don't think people appreciate the theatrical experience enough regardless too. So it's on both sides there. I like that Sean Baker took so much time on his awards campaign to talk about the importance of indie films and the importance of the theatrical experience itself. I thought that was noble and valid. One thing that we could be celebrating is that the Oscars this year were very indie heavy. The most awards won were by the Neon Studio for Anora itself, but also A24 was tied for second place. So that's great news for indie studios and indie film in a time where it is a lot of IP. It is a lot of big major studios and sequels that are getting all the funding and attention. A time where the Sundance Film Festival itself is being accused of drifting away from being an indie film festival. And I have more thoughts on that and that kind of thing, maybe for a different video. But I want to talk about what it's like, because I am a movie influencer. I'm not a film critic. The reason I'm not a film critic, even though I critique movies, is that I do have relationships with movie studios. I do accept gifts and take advertising jobs. You can think whatever you want about that. It's really none of my business what you think. But that's why I don't call myself a film critic. There are tons of legitimate, wonderful film critics doing work that is not being explored by most of the audience. Their job is waning and dying, and that is sad because their work is artistically important, and it's so important for the future of the film industry itself. People like Siddhant Adlakha and Roxana Haddadi and Dan Merle here on YouTube and Mikey Newman here on YouTube, David Ehrlich. Some of these people are doing well, they have good careers, but a lot of them are still struggling and freelancing. I read all of their stuff and they do great work, but they thrive on clicks on Twitter, which is a terrible app. And there's this ongoing anti-art, anti-intellectualism pervading the film community, that critics are the bad guy and that they're so out of touch. They don't like what normal people like. And like, that doesn't even make any sense. What is a normal person? What is a normal person movie? And by the way, most of the guys I just mentioned spend half their time tweeting about M. Night Shyamalan and Michael Bay and how this rips and that rocks. And like, they're just super dude bros that like movies. They're not this bastion of pretentiousness that a lot of people think they are. So in come people like me who now make a living talking about movies online, but also do advertising work for the studios. And I think it has ever been thus. You know, they've talked about professional fandom in the film critic space for decades now, and it has become an increasing problem, of course. But again, I don't mean to put the blame on the audience as a whole, but it's like if you were reading those verified critics work, they would be more successful and they would continue to thrive and be the more pervasive source, if that makes sense. Because of course the studios are going to lean on movie influencers who are more likely to hype up their products than a critic who's going to full on critique it. But those true blue critics have journalistic ethics and they're paid by their outlets. So they don't have to, for instance, but they also won't accept gifts from the studios or do paid promo work. And I do think that there's a dicey middle ground there because, say, if you work for Vulture and you're lead film critic and you're a journalist, but Vulture itself, if you go to their page, is going to have movie trailers and movie ads on their site. We all thrive on ad revenue, but the critics themselves are not going to go to dinner with an executive paid by Focus Features. Whereas somebody like me, I have my own opinions, so I'm sort of the critic, but I also am the outlet that has to house the ads to make a living. So I think it's simpler if I just say, I'm not a critic. I just like movies. I have opinions. Sometimes I think they're bad. Sometimes I think they're good. But 90% of my income comes from advertisement revenue. And I actually think the culture of movies is bigger than ever. There's more people interested in movies because of social media and because of this content creator culture than ever before. And that's a great thing in general. But in the micro, it can be negative because a lot of these people don't actually love the art of film. They aren't interested in researching or learning about cinematography or script structure or the art of acting. And so when they're talking about and critiquing films, the language that they use is very anti-intellectual and anti-art. It's mid, it's good or it's bad, it's great or it's terrible. Critics are awful because they don't like Dodgeball, and Dodgeball is a movie that rocks. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, take some time if you actually care to learn something about the art form and the way to talk about it that's useful and helpful. Or don't, but don't act like you're above it. You're just anti-art. You know what I mean? I think that we've gamified art too much in the last decade or so, in conjunction with Letterboxd and content creation in general. It's all about the stars. Blah, 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 yeah, but what did you rate it out of 10? Or, blah, 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 but how many stars did you give it? And what tier? Would it be S tier or A tier? Or is it more of a B tier? We'll spend hours arguing about this shit that doesn't apply to the art itself. Like a team of 100 people worked on something, processing the trauma of their childhood and trying to connect it historically with events for all of humanity. And all we're going to do is sit there and see, is it 3.5 or 4 stars? What the fuck does that even mean? Who cares, right? Like, we're too obsessed with the stars stuff. And that goes all the way back to goats like Roger Ebert. I think he invented the star system in the Chicago Sun-Times. I don't recall, but it goes back to them and their TV show, which was great. Siskel and Ebert made film criticism popular, but they knew about movies. They knew and loved film, and they were interested in exploring and being challenged. Like Roger Ebert, it's kind of his fault what has happened, but at the same time, the motherfucker won a Pulitzer Prize for film criticism. He was the first one to ever do that. So I think, again, the onus is on the individual person to educate themselves about something they supposedly care about. 'Cause movies are important culturally. I think it's the highest art form. I really, really do. That sounds so highfalutin. It sounds like straight up damn malarkey. But it's the conjunction of theater and music and photography and fashion and so many different art forms all pushed into one thing. It's the most collaborative art, at least, that exists. And it's so wonderful. And it's the everyman art because it's so accessible. Everybody likes movies. Everybody likes TV. And that's what I think is so beautiful about it. So is the movie industry dying? No. Is film criticism dead? No, but critics are struggling. And I do think we have a rampant anti-intellectual, anti-art problem exacerbated by the fact that film criticism, or just yapping about movies, disguised as film criticism, is more popular than ever before. Everybody has a phone. Everybody can make a YouTube channel or a TikTok, and that's wonderful if you take the time to care and to learn and respect the ones that came before. A lot of film critics really resent me and people like me because I am now given access to the same spaces that they are. I am in the press line next to them at film festivals or at screenings. And maybe I didn't earn that. And I do have relationships with studios, and I don't even resent that they resent me, because their salaries are being cut more and more. They're being forced to freelance. They're given less access because studios would prefer somebody who's going to hype up the film. So I totally understand where they're coming from. But I do have hope for the future. I think it's overall a net good that more and more people want to talk about art. We just have to really stand up for art itself and broaden these conversations. This whole bullshit about, does sex move the plot forward? You know, all these dumb conversations, S tier or B tier, they can be fun, but we just got to nip that shit in the bud. You know, people comment on my Letterboxd all the time, or Plex or wherever I'm rating the movies, like, you rated this 3 stars, but this 2.5, that makes sense. And I always respond something to the effect of, I'll make it make sense. The stars don't fucking matter. This is all just for fun. And you're making it less fun. You know what I mean? I think that's the important part. And really seek out and try to see movies, original movies. If you truly want original movies, then why do movies like The Order and Your Monster and Kneecap and Twilight of the Warriors Walled In, all of which just came out last year, do so poorly at the box office if you supposedly are so sick of sequels and IP? The answer is that you're not that sick of them. It's actually what you want, and you don't actually care that much. You just like to say shit in comment sections and get likes, and you're wasting your breath and everybody else's time. That sounded really harsh, but I think you know what I mean. I just like movies, and I want them to succeed. I want more people to have opportunities, and the world is fucking crazy right now. And it's like, why are you yapping so much about movies when everything's on fire? And I'm like, yeah, that's actually a good point, except that what I do for a living, A, is talk about movies, and B, I do think it's important because in times of great strife and struggle, especially under fascism, art is where they go first to take things away from people, because art inspires people, and it's hard to control people who are inspired by art. So I actually do think, and this again sounds so pretentious, it's one of the most important things. Yeah, so if you want to start a channel, don't ask me how to make a successful YouTube channel. I clearly don't know how to do that, but just be open and curious. Try to learn as much as you can about film. I've seen a lot of movies. I've been doing this for a long time, but I still don't know shit compared to so many people. Read people like David Ehrlich and Priscilla Page, Siddhant Adlakha, Robert Daniels. Read their work. You're not going to agree with their opinions necessarily, but they're beautiful writers who know what the fuck they're talking about, and you can get educated on how to engage with art and tropes and archetypes and themes and tone. And then if you want to get in the weeds on how cameras moved in the cinematic visual language, that stuff's so important. And then when we all talk about movies, we can know what we're talking about and have so much more fun than just saying it was mid or it's B tier, you know? Because what the fuck does that mean? I appreciate you watching my new Yap style. Again, it's so much easier for me. You can follow my work on Instagram and here on YouTube, of course. Subscribe, smash that like button, ring that bell. Also, my Substack at kitlaser.com. I write and post videos sometimes. And I have a great podcast that you'll probably think is really funny on mostly TV. It's called Streaming Things. It's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and anywhere you'd find a podcast. And we can engage in with art, help each other, show each other cool stuff. I like movies. Tell me about good movies. Is this a video? Did we do it? We just did it.